Κυρίες και κύριοι, αγαπητοί φίλοι, καλή σας ημέρα. Είμαστε και πάλι εδώ σήμερα σε μια ακόμη συνέντευξη στην σειρά αυτών των συνεντεύξεων που κάνουμε εδώ με το Diversity Charter, τη χάρτα δηλαδή διαφορετικότητας της Ελλάδος, η οποία αποτελεί ένα κομμάτι πανευρωπαϊκό. Σήμερα έχουμε λοιπόν τη χαρά να φιλοξενούμε έναν ιδιαίτερο προσκεκλημένο. Έναν προσκεκλημένο ο οποίος μας έρχεται από τις Βρυξέλλες. Είναι ο άνθρωπος αυτός, ο οποίος είναι ο υπεύθυνος για τη διαχείριση βεβαίως της χάρτας σε όλη την Ευρώπη, της χάρτας διαφορετικότητας, αλλά και των δικαιωμάτων που έχουν πολλές διαφορετικές κοινωνικές ομάδες, κοινωνικές τάξεις, με διάφορες, αν θέλετε, καταγωγές, αλλά και προτιμήσεις. Κοντά μας λοιπόν έχουμε τον κύριο Σάφολκ Σμιτ από τις Βρυξέλλες, ο οποίος είναι κοντά μας και με τον οποίο θα συζητήσουμε σήμερα ιδιαίτερα για το μήνα διαφορετικότητας, τον οποίο διανύουμε τώρα, αλλά και για τα θέματα διαφορετικότητας και πώς μπορούν αυτά να εφαρμοστούν πρακτικά σε όλη την Ευρώπη και όχι μόνο. Λοιπόν, να καλημερίσουμε. Let's welcome first Mr. Smith, Sabrou Smith. Mr. Smith, thank you very much for being here today with us. I want to welcome you, and let me just welcome you to this company that we have on the diversity interview on this series of interviews set by the Diversity Charter in Greece.
Kalimera, good morning from sunny and at the same time snowy Brussels.
Snowy Brussels, let's hope that snowy days are gone when it comes to diversity. And the very first thing that I would like to ask you, Mr. Smith, is obviously about the importance that the diversity has and why there is a need to celebrate diversity when we live in a world with so many different aspects and so many people from different walks of life.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Moussas. First of all, I believe that for all of us, very personally, diversity brings about a very positive association. We are all very positive when we discover something new, when we learn something new, when we adapt ourselves to a new situation. So from the outset, diversity is something which us as human beings normally brings forward positively. Now for the European Union, diversity is of particular importance. Don't forget, our motto is united in diversity. Mm-hmm. So it started with a project to unite very diverse nations towards a common goal. Of course, it doesn't stop there. It is not only about nations, it is about people, it is about the individuals who are very diverse in their way of approaching life, of working, of interacting with each other. So I think all that in itself already calls for a big celebration, because I firmly believe that the European Union project itself is a good example why diversity works and why is it good for all of us in all our diversity. But I think there is also a very rational reason behind. There are several researches which show clearly that diversity pays off. It pays off economically. It is something worth to invest into. It makes us stronger. It makes us more innovative. It makes us more flexible, more adaptable. So that's why I think it is really something which we have to put very high on the agenda, not take as something granted, but also very actively work on diversity. Perhaps a small word just on the European Union itself. You know that equality is one of the core values of the European Union. It is enshrined in the treaties establishing the European Union, and it is there on the one hand, of course, as a human rights aspect, but also because that makes our union what it is, what it made it so strong and successful in the whole world. And that's why the European Commission is also actively engaged, not only in combating discrimination, eliminating inequalities with its legal means, but also to positively drive forward equality, diversity, and by celebrating also diversity through this upcoming European Diversity Month.
Well, thank you for this comment that you made about the Diversity Month. And I would just like to ask you what exactly it is about, because it seems that the diversity does not necessarily limit itself to a month. It can be the whole year, or it can be a habit that needs to be a trend for the whole society, that is an ongoing thing.
Yes, you are absolutely right, Mr. Moutsas. It's an ongoing project. It is not just scheduled to take place in 1 month if if we are serious about diversity, but it is important for all of us to also find these right moments when we can raise awareness, when we can draw the attention of people that there is an issue called diversity on which we have to actively and positively engage ourselves. And that is actually what the Diversity Month is about. It is initiated through the diversity charters, and you may know that throughout the European Union, in 26 member states, we do have the national diversity charters, where for the whole of the Union, as many as 12,000 companies are committing themselves on their own initiative to work on diversity, to exchange on best practice, to look into diversity issues, to overcome problems, to exchange with each other. And 60 million employees are already benefiting because they are employed by such companies. Now, this Diversity Month, that should go beyond. It should go beyond those who are anyhow there, as you nicely said, throughout the year, but it should also take on board all those who are not yet there, small and big companies, profit, non-profit companies, public companies, private companies, whoever is active in the economic sector. And that is actually the whole purpose of the Diversity Month, to create a positive spirit, to focus the attention that diversity is important. And let me also add here one figure to always understand why we do that. You know, we make regularly the Eurobarometer surveys, and there you can see that still almost 60% of the Europeans are of the opinion that discrimination on the basis of ethnic origin is widespread in their country. So there is a case that we need to work on diversity. It doesn't come on its own, and we need more than this 12,000 companies with its 60 million employees. And that's why we have this Diversity Month initiative.
Mr. Smith, allow me to make a comment on what you said. First of all, that you mentioned that there is a charter throughout the 26 member countries of the European Union. Actually, we do have a diversity charter here in Greece, which is actually being active for quite a few years. The thing is, you mentioned that there are many companies that voluntarily actually participate in this diversity project, and the main question is as to how they can implement it in order for the diversity to become a norm in the working environment, rather than just something that needs to be used and put a tick right next to it, as in, we've done this, let's move on to something else. So there is a very big gap as to how you implement the diversity rules and how you can actually make this happen.
I think, as always, we have to start, first of all, with the acknowledgement of a situation that we would like to change. It's extremely important that companies commit themselves, that they, on the basis of this commitment, start to work with their employees to explain why they would like to look into the diversity proactively, then also to understand the situation in the given company, to see whether there are patterns of sometimes even unconscious bias or patterns of discrimination. We're not always speaking about this bad intention, but situations that work against certain groups of people, against minorities, that they don't feel comfortable, that they feel under pressure at their workplace. So it is extremely important to speak, to understand the situation, to get all the employers on board. But you're entirely right. It's not enough to just talk the talk, but companies also have to then walk the walk and go into concrete projects. But all that starts with acknowledging, with getting the employees on board. I think leadership is extremely important, but leadership will never work without having those are to be led also on board, and getting them on board, and having every single member of staff then also convinced that it is not only something which needs to be mentioned at one occasion, once a year, but it has to be implemented throughout the whole year when people are working together.
Now, you did actually say that you need to have the right leadership, but you need also to have the right employees to implement this kind of diversity strategies. Which brings us to the next question. The COVID-19 pandemic has actually exposed many different issues when it comes to the depth of institutional, structural, and systemic, to some extent, discrimination and inequality in the work environment. So the question is, you can implement a diversity strategy when everything is in normal position. What happens when something like the COVID pandemic comes in and causes havoc around the organizational behavior, which is something that we have experienced the last year?
Indeed, the COVID-19 pandemic has shown us once more.
If you can just repeat that, because we seem to have an audio issue.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm repeating that the COVID-19 pandemic has indeed showed to all of us throughout the European Union and beyond the importance of equality. As a matter of fact, we have many incidences where we can see that during the COVID pandemic, generally speaking, those who are most vulnerable in our society are the ones who are suffering most. Just think about domestic violence, just think about the distribution of vaccine, just think about the whole respect of hygiene rules in overcrowded housing situation. But of course also at workplaces, those who are in the most vulnerable situation, they felt themselves in the COVID-19 pandemic situation, again, those to be least understood and least taken in a way care of. Now, what the European Commission did in that context was, you may remember immediately after the outbreak of the crisis last year, the so-called Corona Response Investment Initiative was launched, which practically offered to all the member states a very flexible use of all the cohesion funds, which were not yet committed, so that they could be utilized against the fight of COVID.
No.
And at that time,
Mrs. Schmidt, could you please repeat the last phrase? As I said, you have to excuse us. The internet does play its own game sometimes, so you can just repeat the.
Yes, Mr. When the European Commission set up the COVID Response Investment Initiative, we also called upon member states to be very attentive, to also not neglect and disregard those who are most in need, so that not only the classical economic recovery is in the focus of the investments, but also those who are in an imminent need. So insofar, I lost you now, but I hope that I'm still I can still be heard. And so far, we think that COVID has shown that diversity, equality is an issue which is not a sort of luxury, but it is something which we are in a way obliged in our very own interest to ensure. Otherwise, we get a problem when it comes to social and economic cohesion of our European societies. And in that context, let me also briefly flag that many of these discriminations are of this intersectional nature. You often have situations that someone, because of belonging to
τεχνολογία φαίνεται ότι σήμερα λίγο μας κάνει ορισμένα παιχνίδια. Έχουμε ένα θεματάκι, αλλά ελπίζουμε να... For this, as I said, technology is not in our favor today, but we'll just try to make sure that we can actually get back to this. If you can hear me and you can just try and repeat what you said, okay, you're giving me the thumbs up, that's a good sign. So, let me just wrap this up when it comes to this particular question. You do say that we do have the tools from the European position, the European side, to actually try and overcome this kind of crisis like the COVID-19 pandemic, or let's say other situations like the George Floyd situation that we have actually experienced last year in the US, which actually exposed the racial discrimination and the racial equity both in Europe and overseas as well.
Yes, I firmly believe that we do have the tools in our hands. Actually, speaking about racial discrimination, it is important to be aware of the fact that at the European Union, the protection from discrimination on the basis of ethnicity is the strongest in legal terms. We have since the year 2000 a directive, an anti-racism directive, which is there to protect each and every of us from discrimination, not only at the workplace, but also in the area of employment, vocational training, access to goods and services, social protection. Whenever it comes to any instance of ethnically based discrimination, there are even institutions set up, the so-called equality bodies, which are there to protect. But you are entirely right when you say that the impression is that this is ignored. And this is also supported by the surveys and the statistics. When we look with the help of the European Union Agency of Fundamental Rights, we see that discrimination on the basis of ethnicity is both perceived to be very heavily present. 1 out of 4 respondents who belong himself to an ethnic minority group says that in the past 12 months, I was subject to discrimination. And this is also the perception of the society at large. So we have to work against that. And I can give you 2 examples. One, and these are recent examples.
Mr. Schmidt, once again, we cannot hear.
This is a pity, but I try to give you the 2 examples.
Okay, you have given us a very good example as to how important the racial issue is for the European bodies and what exactly you have achieved. So if you would like to complete, to end this question, to end this answer.
I think what is now ahead of us is that we work both generally on the anti-racism, and you know the European Union has adopted last year an EU action plan against racism, which is now about to be implemented. And one of the important projects, I don't want to go into all of the details, but one of the important tangible projects is also to strengthen the role and the functionality of the equality bodies throughout the European Union. So we are working and thinking about the potential legislative proposal for next year. And the other very concrete, very important issue is the situation of the largest ethnic minority in Europe, which is the Roma. We are speaking about 8 to 10 million people who are throughout the European Union in a situation of economic deprivation, social exclusion, and heavy discrimination. 80% of the Roma live in poverty, but what is in a way even worse than that is that about half of the Europeans, when asked, they say they don't want to have a Roma as a neighbor. So it really shows that there is a problem. And we have for that also a 10-year EU Roma framework on inclusion, equality, and partnership, which in one way initiates in the different member states dedicated plans to be set up on Roma inclusion, equality, and participation. But on top of that, it also enables the association of dedicated funding. I think these are the framework conditions that we can set. But of course, what is again important, that every single company also understands that it is in its very interest, if there are a shortage of labor, to go to those who are just in the neighborhood, to participate in the training, in the vocational training, and to get them as a strong workforce who can contribute with all its diversity to the economic success of the companies.
Allow me to ask you about the coordination that you've been doing on the Roma discrimination issues, because there seems to be quite a big number of these people living around Europe, and they do have quite a long tradition going back many, many years. The question is, how can we actually change the idea, and if you like, the impression that we have about the Romas throughout Europe, because some countries may be more favorable towards them, some others may have a more hostile attitude towards them. It's a situation that varies depending on the country as well.
I think it has a lot to do with the lack of diversity. Many of the European societies actually, almost all of the European Union societies did not succeed to include all the Roma citizens to the full extent into societal life. And that leads, of course, to a lot of misunderstanding, prejudices, pictures which are there in the heads which need to be corrected. So I think one of the key for the future success is indeed not only to speak about socio-economic inclusion, but really speak about equality and participation, to allow people from the very diverse backgrounds, including, of course, also Roma people, to be part of the political processes of the company life, even in the leadership of the companies, to be among us and not to be always explained where they come from, what traditions, that it is not true that everyone is nomadic. There are a lot of pictures which do not simply correspond to the reality, and a lot of habits are also just there because there are no other ways for survival. And I think this can change if we have this focus also on real participation and on equality, and not to conceive it as a sort of favor given to others, but it's in our very own interest to make this changes happen. We have actually allowed for ourselves 10 years where critics can say that's a very long time. Why don't you want to do it quicker? And I think it's a right critic, but we have to see, as you rightly said, we are speaking about 500-600 years of very burdened history. And when it comes to Roma, we speak about slavery, deprivation of rights, but this in a way is true for every ethnic minority, which is different, which has its own story. There are distrusts around, and that has to be broken up by inclusion and getting everyone a full-fledged part of our diverse societies in Europe.
Now, obviously, you did mention quite a few times the term leadership, and let's move on to something different, a different type of discrimination. We're talking about diversity in the workplace, but diversity sometimes needs to actually go into the leadership level between the two different sexes, male and female. And we may be talking about being open to diversity and accepting others, but we see little, let's say a few women only to have high-ranking managerial positions as opposed to men.
Yes, this is true. The statistical average says that I'm just looking at my statistic. I don't want to give you a wrong figure, but only 8% of the CEOs are women. This is what the statistics say. So there's a clear challenge. I think we are now all at a situation that we all understand that this situation deprives us from the possibility to be really inclusive as a society and as a company. So I think the debate is already on how to change it. The question is rather how to do it. And there are, of course, diverging views. The Commission, as always, is very much in favor of voluntary commitments, so that the changes do not come because they are imposed, but because they are wanted, and that the change is really an inherent wish of all those who are there to do these changes. However, sometimes it's extremely good to have also good targets and to say, where do we want to get towards in a certain period of time. And that's why, again, I'm saying how important it is to have, in general, the equality data. And it's relatively easy when it comes to men and women to see how many percentage of men, how many percentage of women are there. And I can tell you only the good example from the own Commission. We had a target back in 2015 to increase the number of managerial female colleagues in managerial level to 40%. And this has been done. So in a relatively short period of time, you can achieve a lot, and I think this is also how the proposal of the European Commission on the women's on boards, on company boards, has to be read, which also proposes this 40% target, because it's based on a positive empiric example from the European Commission itself, and I'm pretty sure there are plenty of other companies who could quote such examples. So I think it's good, again, to have a clear target, to have also some flanking, let's say, regulations which help all that, to make also sure that it's not just an empty target, but that you have also the framework conditions with flexibility that is needed, with parental rights, etc. And then with all that, and then to take all those who are in a leadership position on board to make the change happen. Actually, I looked at of Greece, and they are not that worse. But you wanted to ask, please go ahead.
No, I was just saying that there is no doubt that women can do as well as people as men can do when it comes to managerial positions. And we do have some very, let's say, special examples of women that have been on top of companies, and they've done a really good job, and they have achieved a lot. So, okay, let's say that we have set a target to increase the number of women in managerial positions. But as a society, we are getting older. And when age becomes an issue, then there is no, that on its own self is not an issue of being male or female or just being a person from a different walk of life. It's actually a matter of who will actually follow up and what exactly will he be doing about the fact that at some point we're all getting older and we need someone else to come and fill in the gap.
Indeed, we are all getting older as individuals, obviously, but also as a European society, we are indeed getting older. Statistics show that, and there are actually projections that by 2070, the number of population above 65 is expected to be at 30% of the whole population of the European Union. This is something we have to face ourselves, to find a good response to all these challenges. I think what as an immediate response is there that especially at company level, we have to see how this classical old career patterns need to be modernized, whereby we see that the young person always starts at the bottom of the ladder and then climbs up, and then at a certain age he's there or she's there in the top of the hierarchy. I think we need quite a lot of flexibility, which allows on the one hand to benefit for as long as possible from all the life experience, from the wisdom, from all that what the older colleagues are bringing in, so that they are not, let's say, put aside unduly at a too early stage of the professional life. But on the other hand, I think it is also, it's not really a question about old people only. It's a whole age question. I think it's extremely important, and here we can come back for a moment to COVID again. We have seen that many of those who were affected heavily in the during the COVID pandemic in their professional environment were especially the young people who were about to start their professional career, who were in precarious contractual relationships. And here again, I think it is important that this mutual solidarity is lived and practiced in the companies. I'm now a little bit vague, and the reason for that is that the European Union has just published a green paper on aging. It's a very interesting document. Green papers are meant to initiate a policy discussion. So they are really open. They are not there to tell what the European Commission thinks about an issue, but they invite actors throughout the society to think about a topic. And on aging, the European Union has issued such a green paper, and I think this will be extremely important to engage in this, on this very basic question, into a real debate how to prepare the European Union, the economy, the society of the European Union for the future, in light of the fact that we are getting older as a society. And I think this intergenerational exchange is extremely important, but also the continuous training for older employees. Again, this question of biases, which are often there in an unconscious manner, and and then again, generally speaking, the opening up of diversity. And we expect, of course, a lot of interesting feedback from companies, because they are the ones who are confronted on a daily basis with all these questions. And I think it is from there where we will also hopefully get a lot of input to the green paper discussion that will allow us then to come up with a good concept that allows all generations, independent of age, not only the older, but also the younger, to feel comfortable and well in a diverse workplace, which allows them to thrive and to give their best to their
to contribute as well.
Right.
Now, Mr. Smith, I can just see those really beautiful images behind you. I can see there's snow in the background. But anyhow, I would just like to wrap this interview up with the Diversity Month of May. What is actually so special about it?
Yeah, it is special, first of all, because it's the first time that we make a diversity month. So we had, as I said, these different campaigns during the diversity charters, with the diversity charters. But this time we decided to have this dedicated special month. It will open at the beginning of May, on the 4th of May. So immediately after the Orthodox Easter, with a major conference where the Commissioner for Equality, it's a new institution. The European Commission has, for the first time ever, a Commissioner for Equality, together with CEOs, with civil society representatives, will launch this event. And the idea is then to have throughout this month a very active exchange, participation, not only from those who are in the diversity charters, but also far beyond, and to also recruit, so to say, new fighters for the sake of diversity. And why months? I think this is the month of spring, which is always full with positive hope. It is also the month when for the first time, more than 10 years ago, 11 years ago, the European platform for the diversity charters was created. A couple of member states do have already diversity days, and they are also often in the May of months, and it's also the months of the IDAHOT movements, which draws attention and awareness to the equality of LGBTIQ people. So there are a lot of reasons why it is in months of May.
It's been a real pleasure having you here, and would like to thank you very much for this very constructive interview. And I have to say that we're really looking forward to the Diversity Month of May, especially the conference that you mentioned. Let's hope that this will be a step towards making our world better and giving the rights to every single person, regardless of his sexual or racial origin, or his sexual preference and orientation. Mr. Sappelt-Smith, thank you very much for being with us today. It's been a pleasure. Κυρίες και κύριοι, εδώ ολοκληρώνεται και αυτή η συνέντευξη για την σειρά αυτή των συνεντεύξεων για το Diversity Charter, δηλαδή την χάρτα διαφορετικότητας. Όπως μας είπε ο αγαπητός κύριος Sappelt-Smith, ο οποίος είναι ο επικεφαλής της Ευρωπαϊκής Ένωσης για θέματα διακρίσεων στις κοινωνικές τάξεις και για το θέμα των Ρωμά. Τον Μάιο θα έχουμε λοιπόν αυτό το μήνα, ο οποίος σύγγειλε ένα διεθνές συνέδριο, στο οποίο για πρώτη φορά θα υπάρξει και τοποθέτηση από ευρωπαϊκής πλευράς σε ό,τι αφορά τον Επίτροπο για την ισότητα σε όλη την Ευρώπη. Να ευχαριστήσουμε για ακόμη μια φορά τον κύριο Smith. Mr. Smith, thank you very much for being with us here today, and let's hope that we'll have the chance to actually find out what it means to be equal in a European frame as well. Thank you.
Ευχαριστώ πολύ, Mr. Moutsouas.